The first express entry draw of November. Canada invites 733 candidates for permanent residency. So, just the other day, the Canadian immigration system held its first express entry draw of November, and it sent out invitations to 733 candidates, inviting them to apply for permanent residency. Yeah, you heard that right. 733 people got the golden ticket. If you're wondering what that means, don't worry. I'll break it all down for you. It's actually pretty interesting to see how these draws work and why this particular one stood out. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Express entry is Canada's main immigration pathway for skilled workers who want to live and work in the country permanently. The system is based on points, which are calculated using the Comprehensive Ranking System, CRS. This system evaluates things like age, education, work experience, language skills in English or French, and other factors that might make someone a good candidate to contribute to Canada's economy and society. Now, you might be wondering, how do these draws happen? Well, each week or so, the Canadian government holds draws where they invite candidates who have a high enough CRS score to apply for permanent residency. The idea is to create a pool of skilled workers who are ready to help fill jobs in Canada's labor market. It's a pretty efficient way to manage immigration, actually. The November 1st Express entry draw. So, this latest draw on November 1st, 2024, was one of those moments that has many potential immigrants buzzing. It's important because it shows how the immigration system is adapting, changing, and responding to Canada's labor market needs. In this draw, the cutoff CRS score was set at 496 points, which is a little bit on the higher side compared to some previous draws. But still, 733 candidates were able to meet that mark, which is a good number of people who are now one step closer to calling Canada their home. If you're asking why that score was 496 and not, say, 470, it's because Canada adjusts these numbers depending on how many people are applying and what the current demand is for certain jobs. Okay, I see. Now, 496 isn't a super high score, especially when we compare it to some of the more competitive draws in the past, which have had cutoffs in the 500-plus range. So yeah, this is still a relatively accessible score for candidates who might have strong work experience, good language skills, and a solid education. In fact, if your CRS score is hovering around 490 or 495, you might still have a good shot at getting invited in the next draw or two. So, it's not the end of the world if you didn't get picked this time around. What happens after the invitation? So, okay, let's say you got an invitation and you're feeling pretty good about it. What happens next? Well, after receiving the invitation to apply ITA, candidates have 60 days to submit their application for permanent residency. This application includes things like proof of your work experience, your education credentials, police certificates, medical exams, and other documents that show you meet the requirements for immigration. Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but don't worry. There are plenty of resources to help guide you through the process. And if everything goes smoothly, you could be getting that coveted PR status and be on your way to living in Canada permanently. The cool thing about Express Entry is that it's a pretty fast system compared to other immigration pathways. After submitting your application, the processing time is usually about 6 months, but that can vary depending on your situation. I mean, some people get processed a little faster, while others might take a bit longer, depending on their specific circumstances. It's also worth noting that, even if you didn't get invited in this particular draw, you can still improve your CRS score and try again. A lot of candidates do that by getting higher language test scores, gaining more work experience, or completing additional education. There are also ways to boost your score through Provincial Nominee Programs, PNPs, where some provinces nominate candidates for immigration based on their local labor market needs. These nominations can add a significant number of points to your CRS score, so if you're serious about moving to Canada, it's something to consider. Right, I see. Why the CRS cutoff is important. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, why does the government keep changing the CRS cutoff score? Well, that's actually a good question. The CRS score fluctuates because it's based on the number of people in the pool and the needs of the Canadian labor market. For example, if there's a shortage of skilled workers in a certain industry, the government might invite candidates who have experience in that area, even if their CRS score is a bit lower. On the flip side, if there's a surplus of applicants with similar qualifications, the government might raise the cutoff score to make sure they're selecting the best candidates for the country's needs. Also, don't forget about the way immigration trends shift. Some months, there are more applicants with higher scores, while other months might see a larger number of lower-scoring candidates. It's all about balancing supply and demand. Yeah, it's a bit of a numbers game, but that's why it's so important to keep an eye on these draws and make sure you're doing everything you can to improve your chances. Canada's immigration goals and needs. I think it's also worth mentioning the bigger picture here. Canada is one of the most welcoming countries when it comes to immigration, and it has ambitious goals for bringing in skilled workers, entrepreneurs, and families. Canada's economy relies heavily on immigration, especially because of its aging population and low birth rates. Essentially, the country needs immigrants to help fill jobs and contribute to its growing economy. That's why the express entry system is such a crucial part of the strategy. Right now, Canada is looking for candidates with skills in tech, healthcare, construction, and other essential sectors. So, if you're someone with experience in these fields, you may have a higher chance of being selected in future draws, even if your CRS score isn't super high. It's all about meeting the specific needs of the Canadian labor market. Yeah, it's pretty cool how they try to match candidates with the industries where they're most needed. Future of express entry draws and immigration trends. Looking ahead, I think we're likely to see more changes and updates to the express entry system. The Canadian government has been tinkering with the system over the past few years, even more responsive to local needs, with more emphasis on provincial nominations and specific work experience. So, if you're thinking of applying, it's a good idea to stay on top of any changes to the program, as those updates could affect your eligibility or chances of being invited. Final thoughts. What this draw means for you. So, to sum it up, the first express entry draw of November 2024 saw 733 candidates invited to apply for permanent residency, with a CRS cutoff score of 496. If you were one of those 733, congratulations. You're one step closer to becoming a permanent resident of Canada. And if you weren't selected this time around, don't lose hope. You can always improve your score and try again in future draws. Canada's immigration system is all about opportunity, and there are plenty of pathways available to skilled workers looking to make the move. Keep working on your qualifications. Stay up to date on changes to the system, and keep your fingers crossed. You might just be next, right? So, yeah, that's the lowdown on the first express entry draw of November 2024. Stay tuned for more updates.
Thanks for watching our video. Please hit the button and subscribe the channel.